Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. It's Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here with our friend Adrienne Sweetwater, intercultural consultant at Differänce Intercultural. Adrienne, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Ben. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. This is fantastic. And this week we're focusing on we're doing a Pride Week here since it is Pride Month, and we are kind of exploring all the different facets of Pride and the LGBTQ plus community and how it intersects with global mobility. And I'm really fascinated and excited to have you on today to talk about polyamory. This is awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and for everybody out there, hit that like button, get involved in the comments. We want to hear from you as well. Let us know where in the world you are. Give your company a shout out. Get in the comments if you have questions about how we can make our global mobility policies more inclusive. How can we create space for different family types? I mean, get in the comments. We want to hear from you today. Let's make this show yours as well. We got people checking in. Drew Phillips, good afternoon. Love and Relo fam. What's up, Drew? Drew, are you back in Cali? Are you still in Chicago? Hope you're well. Got to see Drew in person last week. Nadej Welsh, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sounds good. Where in the world are you, Adrienne?
I am calling in from Minas Gerais, Brazil, in a little bit outside of the city of Belo Horizonte. But I'm originally from
You
the
don't
United
sound like
States.
you're from those places, Adrienne.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the United States, which is why I've got that US accent. But I've lived 6 years in Brazil, a few years in Fortaleza in the Northeast, 3 years in Sao Paulo, and now in Minas. So some regional differences too. Yeah.
That's awesome. We got people checking in. This is fantastic. If you got questions for Adrienne, throw them in there. Brian Rivers checking in. He says, hi, Adrienne, from 104-degree Sacramento, California. Adrienne, do you still remember Fahrenheit?
Oh yeah, my brain still works in Fahrenheit actually.
Yeah, so it's hot. It's hot in here. It's like a Nelly video. It's hot. Louise Neal, afternoon, Ben. Looking forward to an interesting conversation from Louise in Chelmsford at Easy Tiger. What's up, Louise? Got to meet Louise at the Eura conference. Awesome, awesome people. Rob Zeitz from Cambridge, Mass. in the house. Look at this. Jana, hey, Adri. So happy to start this week with this show. Shout out to Jana, too. Jana made this possible. Jana's always making the best things possible. Shout out to Jana, the Brazilian vibe coming through here today. And you know Jana from some stuff you guys do in Brazil together, right?
I do. Yeah, it's such a pleasure, Jana, to be connected with Love and Relo through you as well. Thank you. We work in the same global mobility circles in Brazil and internationally. And, we really, as bridge people, bridge professionals, it's a real pleasure to get to speak to other publics as well today, not just our little bubble within Brazil. So more.
Okay, you have to explain this concept to me of bridge professionals.
Ah, yeah, absolutely. So, as an interculturalist, a lot of what we talk about doing is bridging different groups of people, being that, point person, sort of a cultural interpreter between culture A and B or B and C. So, we're constantly trying to bring together groups of people who may not be getting together so well or may have some misunderstandings. And it's always a pleasure. We find ourselves in these kind of middle spaces a lot, in these like limbos of overlaps between, for me right now, Brazil and the US, I sort of am in the middle. Yeah, I'm no longer 100% North American, haven't felt 100% North American for a long time. But of course, I'm never going to be 100% Brazilian, so kind of become this hybrid person.
Wow, that's deep. I love it. It seems like such a cool personality trait to be a bridge person and an interculturalist. Here's a quick audience question. Do you fancy yourself an interculturalist? Are you a bridge professional? I feel like by definition, kind of global mobility professionals are kind of sort of bridge professionals. I like this concept. Put in the comments. I want to know if you identify as a bridge professional. Now that we know what that is, hit that like button. Send some love down to Brazil. Send some love to me in Dallas. I need it. We all need it. Tim's got a very pressing question. Do you cheer for Brazil in the World Cup?
Oh, definitely, hands down. And admittedly, I am not the biggest football or soccer fan, but when it comes to the World Cup, everybody becomes a soccer fan. And of course, I gotta cheer for Brazil.
Well, there's something special when the World Cup comes on, right? You know, I mean, everybody has an interest of some sort. Now, let me ask you, extreme hypothetical that will never happen, but Brazil plays the United States in the finals of the World Cup. Who are you cheering for?
Ooh, you know.
That's what we do. We put people on the spot, you know?
I know. I was thinking the tough questions are coming later, but man, this one. So that would be a moment of some, you know, some dual loyalties there. But I'd got to say Brazil, because my love for the sport has come through living here. And it's a more affective connection, you know, my own, like, that kind of feel good relationship is for Brazil. So.
Yeah. Well, and you sleep in Brazil, right? And that's what you got to watch. That's what you got to watch, the Brazilians. You got to watch them. That's great. That's great. Rob Zeitz, happy summer, winter solstice. Oh, very cool, Rob. Yeah, see Wicked Smart out there in Cambridge. Nadej says, I can't seem to hear the live is stuck. Is anybody else having that issue? Let us know. We'll reset something. John is shouting out with the hearts. Chris Lagerman, hello to you both. Love the topic. Interested in learning more today on intercultural education. Yes, Chris, we will get to that. We will get to different family types as well, and what we can do as global mobility professionals. Ray Abbott checking in from Vancouver. That means we've got Canada in the house. We got Brazil in the house, US. This is great. Look at more. We got more Brazilians. That's what's up. Love it. Let's hop right into it, Adrienne.
All right. Let's do it.
We're talking this is the first time on Love and Real we've ever talked about the topic of polyamory. So would you do me a favor and just kind of set the table for us? What is polyamory?
Yeah, happy to, and excited you guys were open to talking about this. So in light of Pride Month, we wanted to talk about some other identities, other LGBTQ plus. So we sort of tease in the community that it's an alphabet soup. We're always adding more and more letters. And we can get a little bit more into that. Hopefully you guys will talk about it, I know, throughout this whole week with other guests. But polyamory is kind of part of this umbrella of LGBTQ plus queer identities that really is about having relationships that are not monogamous. So that moving away from that more traditional idea of having only one other person with who you're intimately involved and having more than one, so poly being multiple. The idea of being able to love more than one person at one time. So, you know, I like to kind of start off, I know most people kind of, that gets people wondering, how does that work and what's going on with that? Ben, I know you've got two sons, you know, and you love both of them.
Well, that's what I was thinking. There's other aspects of our life where this is normalized, right? Where it's like, I've got two kids. I love them both. I couldn't choose. All the things we say, right? You know, I've got a brother and a sister, you know, I saw a comedian do this thing where, you know, women can have multiple best friends, but guys can only have one, you know, but we have lots of friends that we love, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, for me, I got two dads, I got two moms, you know, I mean, like, I kind of get it from that perspective. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of us can really, you know, most people can get on with that idea that we love more than one person in our lives, and we have different types of relationships with them. I'm sure, you know, you love both of your sons, and they're different people, right? They have different personalities,
super different,
different connections with each one, because we're all really unique individuals. And that's, you know, polyamory kind of acknowledges that, and it says, and this is my own definition too. I'll be clear that I'm talking about it from a personal standpoint, but that understanding that having more than one partner can be complementary to your life. And, you know, I have two female partners, and we're in a triad, which is a makeup of one type of poly family. There's a lot of different types of poly families, and we can get into that more later on. But I just want to, you know, decipher. Sometimes people say, well, what's the difference between polyamory and polygamy?
Yeah, that was good. I mean, that was a question, because we hear that term thrown around, and I don't know that we've ever, or I've not heard them really defined, you know, respective of one another.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, polygamy is really around marriage. Like, who are you married to? Are you married to more than one person? And it's sort of acknowledged within more of a religious context. Like, we hear about it in the US a lot with the Mormon communities, so particularly in Utah, coming out of Salt Lake City. But in the world, it's really known specifically with some sects of Muslim religion, where you tend to usually have a man who's married to multiple women. So polygamy kind of, you know, it stays in this marriage realm. Polyamory isn't necessarily about marriage. It's about your relationship structure. It can involve marriage, but it's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open.
Maybe we can talk about the different structures, and we got people checking in here. Hit that like button also right now. Send a little love out here to all of us. Louise Neal, UK. Yes, the UK is in the house. I forgot to represent the UK. Pakistan is in the house. What's up to here? Good to see you. Louise is saying, I do. I love many people. Love you too, Louise. Rob Zeitz is saying World Cup's coming to Dallas. That's what's up. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but it's true. It's true. Let's talk about the structures, though. Can you talk about the structures? And we're kind of talking about this also to like kind of also talk about, you know, families, and, you know, because we here in Global Mobility, which sits typically within HR and the people organization, you know, have to care for these families. And so I think it's important for us to also understand the different types and structures that they take on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned that you're in a triad. Maybe you can, if you don't mind, maybe you can explain a little bit about that and maybe some of the other structures as well.
Absolutely. I'd be really happy to. So, you know, just to get an idea, like, polyamory is nothing new, and having different types of family structures is nothing novel. You know, I think sometimes it gets a little bit more press more recently. You get some celebrities that have open marriages or whatever, and people kind of, it becomes like a popular cultural hip thing or trendy. But I just want to really, like, you know, demystify the idea that it's something new, because like, we've been having alternative family structures for as long as people have existed, as long as different cultures and societies have been around. So the idea
and I'm gonna stop you as you go. I have questions. So the terminology alternative family structures, does that feel like an equitable, fair phrasing?
I mean, I use it because it's for when I say alternative family structures, I mean everything that's not that nuclear family of like wife, husband, 2 kids, dog, white picket fence, whatever you want to put in there. Which today, like, honestly, most families would fall into that, whether it's like with stepkids, divorces and remarriages, or
non-traditional seems to be the norm right now.
Exactly. So I think that's the other piece to demystify, is like kind of taking that nuclear concept we have out of the center of the conversation and realizing most families have some form of alternativeness to their, to their picture, to their family portrait. And then, so with poly, we call it poly for short because it's a little bit long. There's a lot of different ways within the polyamory community that you can have a family structure. Our structure is like a triangle. So we're 3 women. My partners were together for over 10 years. So I came in 3.5 years ago. They have that history together, me being the newer person. We can get into some of that later on, but what's important to know is that we see each other as all equal. So there's no like primary partner relationship within our triad. Some polyamorous couples they prioritize one relationship. So they maybe have been married for a very long time. They decide, we're going to open up, we're going to have other partners, but we maintain a primary structure, the two of us.
Okay, I want to carry on the triangle analogy.
I
mean, so the triad you're describing is where everyone's equal. I learned this was an equilateral triangle.
Yeah.
Is there an isosceles? I mean, what you're describing were two. I mean, how far does the triangle? I mean,
Sure.
I'm very. I
Yeah.
never found an application for geometry.
So there's a lot of different structures. So a lot of time there's another structure like a V, where you may have just one person in the middle and they have two different partners, but the partners are not connected to each other, but they need to know about each other. Like, really, at the end of the day, polyamory is about consent, right? So it's having multiple partners, but that everybody knows that that's what's happening. There's nothing that's being hidden. There's nothing, there's no cheating going on, but there's a lot of communication involved. There's a lot of openness, and that everybody's aware. So if you're in a V, then I might have a partner here, but I have another partner here, but they don't necessarily have a relationship, the two of them, but they do know.
But it's consenting. I like what you're saying about consent. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's kind of the difference between when we think about relationships, traditional, we'll say, right, if there's two partners, it's unacceptable because it's not consenting. It's not the arrangement. It's not the structure. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense here. And you're saying there's different structures. So, and all of these are. Then I'm going to take it from a global mobility and from an HR perspective. If we're thinking about families, all of these are equally valid when we look at, from an HR perspective, from a benefits perspective, how we administer benefits and how we include families. It would seem. I mean, is that what you would, advocate for, all of these being equally valid?
Absolutely. I really would. And I know it's tricky when you start to get to policies and benefits and like putting family structures on paper. But I think like one way to start to look at more inclusive family policies is when you are working with somebody, an expat or the family, just to say, like, tell me about your family structure, that's a really open way to not make any assumptions.
So instead of saying, are you married? How many kids do you have? Tell me about your family.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about your family and who is coming on this assignment with you, or, in your ideal world, who would be making this move with you as well? Because a lot of times people want to have other family members or their mom or an auntie as well, or another caregiver for a kid. And so it's just a way more inclusive way. A lot of times, and I get it, like most of our world is really oriented towards couples and that kind of nuclear model. So most of the languaging is about couples, is about +1, is about, spouse, marriage, this very like dual languaging. And it may be, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about you when you said +1. I mean, I've used that terminology, right? You send out an invitation to a thing and, you can give somebody a +1, right? You don't even think about, I have never thought about that not being an inclusive way to, I've thought about the fact that I don't want them to bring their kids to the party, but I never thought about that as, not being, we do it on purpose for some reason. I said, listen, you get a +1, you can't bring the whole family and
the whole family.
There's
for
no
sure.
chicken nuggets on the buffet tonight. It's just, but so I guess I am being exclusive in a way, right? I guess I should unpack that a little bit. Chris Lagerman, I think he's kind of going where we want to go too with this. Chris says, and Chris is good for the show. He was on last week. And if you have questions, put them in there. I'd love to hear where your questions are here. Put them in there and we'll try to get them answered. Chris says, do you see any policies that address this in assignment packages?
Great question, Chris. I don't work with policies as like detailed, with all the kind of nitty gritty details that a lot of relocation professionals have to. But I do know there's this movement towards making assignment packages more inclusive, to having, benefits having assignees be able to kind of pick and choose their benefits a little bit more. And so I think that inclusive languaging can start to get addressed within each of those companies' policies, but it's definitely a long way to go.
Yeah, I think Chris, and I'd love to hear the thoughts from the crowd, right? Because the crowd, we have people who are from relocation management backgrounds, we have people who are, moving folks, we got people from all over, we got mortgage, real estate. I mean, I'd love to hear what you think about ways that we could make policies more inclusive now that we have a better understanding of what polyamory is and the different family structures. You talk about plus ones, right? And then I also think about a lot of relocation policies are structured based on the amount of dependents you have, right? And dependence is a legal term or a tax term oftentimes. Health insurance uses it too, right? It's like, so, when I think about, that, I mean, because if the government, and we all know the governments have been way behind the times in recognizing, we can go back. They're always behind the times in recognizing who can get married, who can live together, who can have, relationships and be considered a family by law. And we can go all the way back to last, 100, 200 years. But if they don't recognize someone as a dependent for tax purposes, that doesn't mean a company shouldn't recognize your family as dependents or as part of your family. And maybe, and dependence probably isn't even the right word. I mean, what's a better word that maybe we can use?
That's a good question. And I don't have a good answer for that either. I'd be curious to hear from folks. But the other thing that came into mind is guardianship. So around legal rights with children, there's that assumption of a two-parent household that predominates, right. And so that kind of every other family structure gets pushed aside or excluded or not have, doesn't have the same benefits. So having that's something that we've been considering down the line. We hope to have children, and one of the moms is going to need to have full guardianship, because we can only two moms will be able to have.
Well, that sucks. How do you, what do you draw straws? What do you do? Do you have rock, paper, scissors down there? What do you do in that situation?
We have to be strategic about it. There's a lot of since we're a cross-cultural family as well, and we've got citizenship questions involved, we will probably make those decisions based off of what matters for our children to have dual citizenship.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot.
Right, because it's if you have dual citizenship and the kid's yours, then now the kid has dual citizenship, and now, oh my gosh, it's and the governments. God bless them. Yeah. I have another question for you. So here we are. It's Pride Week, and we focus on LGBTQ plus, issues and topics. And this is always a question that I find really odd and uncomfortable to ask. But how do you define your? I don't know if define's even right. How do you identify yourself and your partners? How, where do you feel like you identify there?
No, I really appreciate the question, actually, because while it might be uncomfortable to ask, it's a question that I don't get asked very frequently, and I like being able to have the space to talk about. So thank you. Yeah. And my own identity, I really like the term queer within that LGBTQ. The Q is what most defines me and what I've most identified with. And it's a word that, has been problematic in the past. And we were talking about that beforehand, that a lot of folks, when they hear the word queer, they think, oh, that's a negative term. I shouldn't use that.
I'll be honest. I mean, when I still today, when I hear it, I get my, like the hairs on the back of my neck kind of stand up, like, ooh, like, you know, because I was raised that was not a nice word to use. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and here we are today. And then in college, I had a professor that talked about, you know, queering this and queering blackness. And we took all these, we took all these classes. I took a lot of Africana studies classes. There was some intersectionality with some other classes, women's studies classes and other things like that. So we got into that a little bit. And that was kind of the first time I heard the word used constructively. Maybe you can kind of unpack that for us a little bit, and maybe we can give people some guidance around that.
For sure. So it's always, I think, a good question to ask people how they prefer to identify or whatnot, to not assume. So for me, like since my partners are two women, a lot of times people assume that I would identify as lesbian, which I get because visual, like, kind of makes sense. But for me, that's always been a pretty restrictive term, because it really, it defines as kind of like female attraction to another woman, and this kind of binary woman to woman piece. And my own attraction is a lot more varied than that. So I have this spectrum of, genders of folks who I'm attracted to. So lesbian never quite did the trick for me. It never quite fit. It felt like too small of a box. Whereas queer is a much bigger umbrella term, and it really acknowledges a wider spectrum. So one of my partners, I'm
thinking about this. It's making sense, because I kind of thought you were going there because of the polyamory fact. But when you said because there's multiple genders that I am attracted to, that I didn't expect you to say that, and that makes a lot of sense. And I hadn't thought of the fact that lesbian was a restrictive term because it's woman to woman. But now, as we're starting to use other pronouns, right, and we're now, and my understanding is evolving as I'm sure a lot of folks that are watching the show. Hit that like button right now if your understanding is evolving. If you have questions, feel free to leave them as well. But no, that makes perfect sense. So I'm with you. I'm just processing and understanding.
Yeah, I appreciate the processing. So one of my partners is like cis woman, so born female, identified as female her whole life, tends to have a more feminine gender expression, pretty similar to mine in terms of outward identity, likes to get her nails done. And my other partner is also a woman and is a female athlete. And so when she's particularly in her sporting world, she particularly makes a case for women in sports. But her gender is a little bit more genderqueer or masculine identified. So in the States, we might say more butch or more, in Portuguese, we have other equivalents too. So there's a lot of different languaging terms. So her outward expression is more male identified, and so her gender is more genderqueer or more non-gender binary, another way to put it. It wouldn't quite fit as male, but definitely not quite fit as female, kind of somewhere in the middle.
Okay, that makes sense. So a couple of words real quick. And so much of this is about language. You said cisgender is what you're referring to, I believe. And that is identifying as the gender or the sex you were born with. Is that accurate?
Yeah, great. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm a cisgendered woman. When I was born,
I'm a cisgendered male.
Yes. Doctor looked at me and said, "You have a baby girl." I have identified as feminine for my whole life, so I identify as a cis woman. Whereas someone who doesn't have that match, so their identity isn't matching what their body is perceived, then they may be either trans or genderqueer or some other non-gender binary, non-gender conforming identity.
Is it fair to say or accurate to say that most people who identify as straight would also be considered cisgendered?
No, great question.
All right.
Yeah, excellent question.
Okay.
So, yeah, no, they're totally separate. So identifying as straight or having, attraction to someone of the opposite sex, that's all about your sexuality. So it's who you're attracted to. It doesn't necessarily deal with how you identify what your gender is as a person. So for example, I have a friend who's transgender male, and he identifies as straight because he is attracted to cisgendered women.
Thank you. Now that makes sense. Okay. Got it. I'm learning so much right now. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure. That's what we're here for.
The other word you used was butch. And I want to know, is that a word that's an acceptable adjective to identify a more masculine woman?
Yeah, so within the community, like we have a lot of our own languaging, and that butch femme dynamic. So that's the kind of more, I identify as more femme, more feminine presenting, also get my nails done, wear jewelry, longer hair, etc. Butch tends to be that more masculine presenting. It's very acceptable. We use it in a positive way. So that's a great question. Like, is it okay to use? I would say, like, how are you using the term? If you're using the term in a way that's not pejorative, but you're just describing somebody's gender and it's a descriptor and it's how they would identify, and you're using it in a very like neutral or positive way, then that's cool. If you're using it to put someone down or to exclude someone or in a pejorative way, not so cool.
Got it. So it really does have to do with the intent and the intent. And I think to some degree, maybe your educational level and being obviously accurate. And I really appreciate being able to have this kind of open dialogue. And I hope that people watching this also, I hope we're asking some of the questions that you've wanted to know. And I hope that this also can be a model for dialogues that you can have in your personal life too. And I think what I've found in having these conversations is that coming from a place of curiosity, a place of empathy, a place of love, I think is always a good start for those conversations. So, cool. We got some comments coming in here. Louise Neal, very interesting subject. Adrienne and Ben, I have many same-sex family and friends in my life. This is a subject that is not very well published. Yeah. We try to have conversations that you don't normally see at Worldwide ERC on the show here. That's kind of the cool thing about being an independent program. This is actually kind of a question I wanted to ask in a little bit different way, but we talked to a lot of folks during Pride Week, Pride Month, who, talk about, being born this way, also being, knowing from an early age that, they felt different, or they felt, that they weren't, truly themselves, as the gender, they just didn't identify with the sex that they were born as. Also all sorts of, stories like that, with that common thread of not feeling at home in societal norms and things that they were told to be like. Is this something that you felt like early on in life, or is this something you came to realize like later in life? I'm curious if that's all right to ask.
Absolutely, Ben. No, thanks for asking. So one of my good friends from college, I remember when I first came out to myself and was coming out to friends in college, he said, Adrienne, it's coming out as like a lifelong process. You never stop coming out because you're also, not only are you changing, your identity changes, but the circles with which you move in are changing. And so One important piece is that, all of us as individuals, we have pieces of our identity that we foreground, like we put up front about who we are. And sometimes we don't have a choice, like, what the color of our skin is, or, what our accent is like, or there's 1,000 other things. You don't have much to say of how you get to present that. But there's other aspects of our identity in our lives, like sexuality, that can be a little bit more backgrounded. And that kind of gets put on the back burner sometimes, in professional circles or depending on the context. So it's, you have these moments where you switch that. I'm going to put this a little bit more up front, or, getting to know somebody, having a closer friendship, I'll go ahead and share this piece of my identity with them and also learn more about them. So I think that's, just that understanding that coming out, it's not like that moment, but it's more like an entire lifetime, and for all individuals with different aspects of our identity. Yeah, it's not just about sexuality.
When you say that, you're coming out your whole life, that sounds like an incredibly painful, at worst, burdensome. I mean, it just sounds like having to do that all the time. I mean, I hear people talk about how painful or scary, maybe not painful, but sometimes surprisingly accepting, but just, getting like, okay, I'm going to do this, boom, did it. And then having to do that, I mean, every day. I mean, that's often. I mean, does that weigh on you?
It does. Like, I have a slightly different take on it. I come from a lot of privilege. Like, I feel really lucky to have a really strong community of people who support me, my family, my parents. The people who are most matter to me in my life have supported me from the get-go, and that's made a huge difference. And a lot of people can't say that. So I really recognize my own privilege in being able to say that, I feel comfortable in a lot of realms of my life that I know a lot of people don't have access to. That comfort and that safety as well, that emotional safety and that community safety. That said, I would say that I do have sadness around, like, I often find, like, I have a little bit of a lighter, I guess I'll take a lighter take on it for today's topic, which is, I often find, like, it's a little sad that people don't have more creativity with, like, how they think of family.
Yeah.
Like, I find that a bit sad, like, for them mostly. Like, I find it kind of amusing that most people, when I bring my partners somewhere, when we're out, like, they just think we're three friends. Like, it doesn't even cross their minds that when we say, like, we live together, they're like, oh, so you're roommates, or no, like, we're partners, we're a triad. And of course, like, we don't tell most people that we're just meeting them. We kind of make those calls about when we come out or not, but it really, like, doesn't fit for a lot of folks. And I find that, like, more curious than anything else. Like, that their own conceptions of, like, what is relationship or what is family are pretty narrow. So that it doesn't, that's, like, the more kind of, like, curious point to me, that I guess I kind of have to keep it lighter so that helps the day-to-day heaviness not feel quite so heavy.
Okay, so let's keep it light then. I got a question, right? Because I'm thinking about, like, if we were to meet at, like, a dinner party or, an event or whatever, right? I know how couple dynamics work, right? When it's like couple, typically you find one more interesting than the other. You have a conversation, you dominant conversation with that person. This person has, you kind of maybe it's your opportunity to kind of, like, ditch those people that you don't have as much in common with, whatever. Does the triad couple, dynamic, does, like, just in a, like, a social conversational dynamic, do you notice, like, differences in the way, like, socializing? I mean, it's crazy. Maybe it's a
Sure. I mean, yeah, we have like, just like you would with a couple, there are friends of ours who connect more with one of us than with the other two, or, there are a lot of friends that of my partner, because they've been together for a longer amount of time, so that are from like their past that I have my own relationship with, but it's newer. I don't have as much history with that friend group as they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have, I mean, it's just another layer, it's another layer. I'd say we have all the same dynamics as a couple, but just with another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
Since we're another person.
So how can we as global mobility professionals, but also humans, be most supportive of our LGBTQ plus friends? In general, maybe like professionally and personally, if you could answer the question on those kind of two levels.
Absolutely. So, one really important thing I think as global mobility professionals and a responsibility, this ethic we have for working with all different types of families is providing information, right? Giving a potential assignee or a family that's about to move, like the info that they need about their country of destination so that they can make some informative decisions.
Right.
And really starting off with that opening, like, tell me about your family, tell me about the needs of your family, and just kind of really starting from that place of what, not having an assumption of what they are going to need, because it's probably going to be pretty different than what you might imagine.
Yeah. And is it almost helpful to kind of signal like allyship in a way to let people know it's like acceptable and supported by the organization to have a non-traditional family? Because I've heard, so I worked in the moving business for a long time, right? And I've heard of situations where the employee won't tell HR or won't tell the relocation management company something about their life, but then they'll tell the move, the move coordinator, because they just have a different level of relationship, all sorts of things, right? Maybe they think it's not within policy, or they think that, or maybe they're not out at work, or maybe, whatever is the case. And, I'm wondering if there's a way that we could, signal our allyship or that these things are acceptable and embraced and supported.
Great question. And yeah, I think companies can do that in lots of good ways. Literally visually, they can signal by having the flag that you guys have right now on LOVE+RELO. That's, the LGBTQ trans flag there. That's a great literal symbolic way of saying, you're welcome here. It's open. And doing that virtually, we have so much online now too, being able to have some form of that in your background at the very minimum for Pride Month, at the very minimum. But I would suggest thinking of ways to roll it in. It's not always, again, just as individuals have identities that they want to foreground and background, it might not always be in the company's interest to have this totally foregrounded, but there are ways in which you can let that allyship be known.
And definitely we think about time also when we choose the pictures on the pamphlets, right? And there was this big push. There's this big push to always, choose, okay, let's make sure we have the same number of white faces, black faces, Latino faces, Asian faces, and you see that real peppered in real nice, and all the stock imagery, right? But I still think we need to see, more more gay couples, more LGBTQ plus, we need to see more folks represented in the stock photos that we use in our marketing, I think.
Absolutely. And maybe with even, I agree completely that visibility is huge. And that's been something that's been really important for our family too, is getting a lot of positive feedback just about visibility, the fact that we do post on social media and talk about being a triad. A lot of people are just oh my God, thank you so much for the representation, because it's not as common as we'd like. And so they find it helpful. And I think like offering that type of packages too, maybe even examples, like when you have other families that have different needs, maybe, it's a mom coming, a grandma coming along to help do child support and childcare. And that person is going to have a lot of different needs than, a spouse might, or than another partner might. So, there's, offering those kind of flexible benefits. Maybe it's needing more flights home to visit a different partner who's not coming on the assignment, but there's still a primary partner on the assignment who's, the official move person. I mean, there's a wide variety. And the last piece about allyship is, I would say, a lot of it is about listening carefully to how that person is identifying, how they're talking about themselves and their family, and then acknowledging it back. So I give an example that I often don't come out as a triad. I often just come out as being in a same-sex relationship to kind of like gauge how people are, right? Because if like someone has a bad reaction to me being in a relationship with one other woman, imagine when I tell them I'm in a relationship with two other women, I don't need to go there.
Dip the toe in with one and then see how that feels. And gotcha.
Exactly. So I will often, like when I'm first getting to know people, just use one. And I don't consider that a problem, because it's like my own choice about the amount of information I'm letting on or not. And then if then once I'm feeling more comfortable, like I'll often say, well, actually there's two of them and we're a triad. And I remember the other day, this was in a yoga class, the guy was like, oh, you guys are a polyamorous relationship. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, cool. And then like we went on to talk about something else, and he just treated it with this, he acknowledged it, right? He said, oh, you're a polyamorous relationship. Yes. And then moved on, like different topic, kept going into small talk before class. And that was an excellent way to just say like, okay, you see me, you hear me, you recognize us, but it's not, you're not gonna like go into all these intimate, gory details about that. You got it. And now we keep talking about the weather.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's really good modeling for folks who maybe haven't encountered or haven't discussed polyamorous relationships. It's good language and good to know to just kind of acknowledge it and you keep it moving. We got people checking in. Patricia, hi there, managed to join. What's up, Patricia? Hit that like button out there. Patricia, I hope you got home okay. I think you left New York today or yesterday, didn't you? Hope you're back in Brazil. Positive vibes to you. Anna Maria, hi there. Little hand going. Hey, Anna Maria, what's up? Hit that like button out there. I want to ask, going back to something you said before about counseling folks who are going on assignment about the destination country. Are there countries that recognize polyamorous relationships? And then, of course, are there countries where you're just like, no, go, don't even. We have a duty of care, not to inform people of this country's stance. But let's start with the positive. I mean, are there some countries that are like ahead of the game?
So great question. And I admittedly am just starting to learn about this area as well. So welcome comments and other information that people have. To my knowledge, the short answer is they're not really. There's a lot of countries that recognize polygamy for Muslim practitioners, like in a very specific religious context.
Okay.
And there's actually, I looked up, there was over 50 countries that do recognize polygamy. So being married to multiple people for religious purposes in that, but it's very like specific to that understanding of polyamory, which is not at all my case, for example, and not, so what I do know is that there are a few states like, and actually even in Brazil, there were over 3 different cases that were registered of polyamorous marriages that were recognized and then later overturned. And similar things have been happening in the US. So they'll kind of get these legal, like there'll be a legal battle for 3 parents with 1 kid. And like California has recognized a little bit more. So if you remember back with gay marriage in the US, like it used to go state by state. And then you have moments where, okay, like gay marriage is recognized in Hawaii and in California. Oh,
and then people would go over there, they get married, they come back, you know, yeah.
And then a few years later, like politicians change, policies move, and then it took a while to be recognized on a federal level. So I see that, like, I mean, we're not nearly within the poly community, like we're just kind of like crawling legislative wise to get recognition for really basic, basic rights and recognitions. And I don't expect it to happen in our lifetimes. That
was going to be my next question, actually. Do you expect it to happen in your lifetime?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I would just add that this is also a long history of LGBT families needing to be really intentional families, because they have to be very thoughtful about how, like, if we have kids and we intend to have children, we really want their rights protected, no matter what happens to any of the 3 of us, or if we stay together or not. We want to make sure they are taken care of. And so it means like we need to think about legal ramifications and implications that a lot of like straight couples or more nuclear families don't necessarily think of, because it's just kind of a given. So I think that extra intentionality is a positive in a way, because we have to think through really carefully how we go about our union and our kids in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Kids complicate things for traditional relationships.
Exactly.
I can't imagine. Patricia is saying, very interesting topic, and how we're all starting to work with similar cases, but many still don't admit. How do we make them more comfortable to share? You want to kind of just maybe one or two ways for Patricia? Thank you, Patty, as well, and hit that like button out there as well. Go ahead, Adrienne.
Sure. I mean, I would go back to just kind of that really curiosity piece of getting to know more about the folks that you're working with, and hear about families and what matters to them and not. And like, it's okay to, I mean, like in Brazil, we use a lot of social media, right? Like we post a lot on Instagram. My partner's a lot more than I do, but like, it's okay to, I mean, if someone's posting on social media, then you can ask like, oh, I saw you're with your partners in wherever, how was that? Or did you guys have a good time? It's, I think a lot of times that kind of more just kind of getting to know you stuff is a good question. Another question I saw pop up some time ago, Ben, I hope it's okay to answer, was about if I knew I was open to this type of relationship structure. And that was also, I didn't know until it became apparent, like that. So it wasn't something that I had thought about before, but I met one of my partners during Carnival. So, and my other partner was training. She's a professional athlete, and I knew that this woman was married to her. So, we were in that kind of party Carnival vibe, and but it's all about consent, right? So I was like, okay, let's wait till your wife gets here before we go any further with this flirtation. And that, I'm really glad that we, were able to start off that way. So it's, I think sometimes that's why I think we're all humans in evolution, right?
That's, I think it's always right to start off on the right foot with open honesty as well in any relationship, if you're going to end up on the right foot. So, this is amazing. Love this topic. Love your candor and openness and taking our questions. Let's get to the top 5. You ready, Adrienne?
Yeah, I'm ready for the
All
top
right, what's
five.
our top 5 today?
Okay, so top 5 questions that I'm sick of hearing. Cool.
I think we just had a typo real quick. We're going to put it back up. Top 5 questions I'm sick of hearing. Okay, I love this. I love this topic. I love this. I can do this topic every single day. There we go.
Okay, great. So top 5 questions I'm sick of hearing from others outside of the poly community.
All right, let's do it. Number 5.
Do you all feel equal? Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we have to make sure that we like give a little extra attention to each 3 of us. You know, sometimes people say, well, you came in later, you know, your partners have been together for such a long time. Do you ever feel, you know, like lesser than or, and we just, you know, it's about communication, right? I would say that's the key to any relationship is like really good, constant communication. So making sure when we do have moments where someone feels left out or know that we incorporate them, we listen, and we shift up the dynamic.
I feel like I could learn a lot from your relationship, to be honest with you. I was like, I could probably use more communication in my relationship. Number 4.
What are your sleeping arrangements? Oh my gosh.
Oh man,
yeah.
that people really ask you that though. That seems like a really. I ask a lot of questions. I pride myself on being right on the line, and this is a question I don't think I'd ask anybody, to be honest with you.
For sure. Like this question to me falls in that like, would you ask this question to a straight couple? Probably not. Then you probably shouldn't ask it to
anybody. Yeah, exactly.
Like just for curiosity's sake, we do have a king size bed. The 3 of us do sleep in the king size bed. We also have I'm going to answer it now because it kind of gets it out of the way and people are curious and that's cool. We also have a single bed. And so we actually have like a rotation where we'll sleep like 2 of us and 1 of us one night and then the 3 of us. And then we switch
makes sense.
Yeah, but it's all equal. So there's never like a dyad with more time together than another dyad.
I got you. I would take the single bed myself.
It's kind of nice sometimes.
That's what I'm saying. That's the vacation. That's the vacation bed. Honestly, that's yeah. All right. Number 3.
Is it an open relationship? Yeah. This one also, like I get it because people are so curious and they're like, whoa, you're not monogamous, you're poly, you're a triad. Does that mean like anything goes? And a lot of times and then it's like 3 women. So we have a lot of, let's just say unwelcome solicitations or people are like, oh, wow, you know, and no, we're closed, the 3 of us. It's not I understand the question, but again, I would say like, just be mindful of if you wouldn't ask somebody, if you don't have the type of relationship that's like close enough or friendship that's deep enough, you probably don't want to go into this question.
Yeah. Unless there's like at least 2 years of friendship and 2 glasses of wine, you probably don't want to go there. Let me ask this though about that, right?
Sure.
So monogamous means I think 1 other partner.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say it means that. I think it means I don't remember my Latin. Is there a 2 other partner like equivalent to like that means like just those 2 like a
great? I don't know. There could be. It's a good question. I mean, we just say we're a closed triad.
Closed triad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because closed triad. Got it. All right. On it. Number 2.
Don't you get jealous? Also a great question. I mean, a great question, but also kind of annoying because my immediate response to that is like, well, I think jealousy is a normal human emotion. It's a part of all relationships, not just romantic relationships. Brazilians have like a way healthier relationship to jealousy in my mind than US Americans. In fact, like it's just a lot more common to talk about and joke about, and it's not considered something like negative or.
Where does that come from? Like you're a cultural kind of expert. Like, why do Americans have this like overzealous jealousy kind of vibe going on compared to Brazilians, which have a more healthy, like what is that?
I see it about the value of affect, like emotional affect, which is really important for Brazilians, but it also means there's a higher value of dependency, like emotional and relationship dependency. So it's just jealousy is understood as a human, it's part of your spectrum of human emotions. In the US, like we value that rationality so much and that independence so much that we kind of compartmentalize, like, oh, if you're jealous, that automatically is a bad thing, or it automatically means like possessiveness.
Oh.
And I don't think, I think there's a lot to be explored there with US culture, that and just emotions, like being a little bit more okay with feeling. In the poly community, we actually say like a little J, like it's not as heavy as, oh, I'm feeling jealous, but it's like, oh, I'm feeling a little J seeing you with another partner or whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of humanizes the emotion.
Yes. Okay. We do like to possess our partners in this country. I don't know if I've not really had a relationship in another country, so I can't really compare it, but I do see the possessiveness. It's very, very, very strict monogamy over here. Number one.
I have had a hard time. Oh yeah, I have a hard time handling one woman. How do you handle two? Yeah, this is another one we get a lot, and it's kind of funny. Like it's either one or the other extreme usually. Like sometimes there'll be guys that are like, oh yeah, I totally get that. Like two women, right on. Or they'll be like, wow, I have enough trouble from my like one wife. How do you deal with two? And again, like I just would say we're three people, so it is more complex, but we also have like more benefits. I would say like there are three functioning adults in our relationship instead of two. So just logistically speaking, it's a lot easier to function. Like there are three people to take care of a house. There's a lot of, just like practicalities that makes things easier.
I could use an extra hand. I get it. I get it. I know. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially when kids are involved, because there's this whole. I mean, one of your partners is a athlete, and I don't know what sport, but I mean, there's a whole concept of zone defense. Somebody told me once. They said when you have one kid, you go from playing zone, and when you have two, you're playing what we call man to man. One-on-one defense, right? And then, oh, God forbid you have three, because now you're just outnumbered and like they run the show, right? So now if you got three adults, you're like, you're on top of things, and somebody gets sick, you got options. It's good. I like it. It makes sense. This is great. I appreciate you taking these questions too, like, and sharing these questions, kind of head on about some of the crazier, cringier kind of questions that you get asked, and actually having fun with this. This is great, and I learned a lot in the process, Adrienne, and I really appreciate you being so open and honest and really educating me and hopefully folks who are watching on what polyamory is about and how we can be great allies and how we can be better professionals as well. Do you want to leave us with look, Jana's got a comment here. Thanks for sharing such an amazing way, Adrienne. You made my day when you accept my invite today. My heart is so full of love. I learned so much. You inspired me always. Thanks, Ben, for making this possible.
Oh.
Awesome. Love it, Jana. Thank you so much. Rob Zeiss, learned a ton today. Thanks for sharing, Adrienne, and thanks for hosting, Ben. Appreciate you, Rob. Adrienne, do you want to leave people with maybe just a final thought?
Cool, no pressure. Yeah, I guess I would just say like stay curious, and also I would take some of the onus on oneself to like find other resources. And there's a ton out there, you know, there's a ton of great content. There's podcasts, there's, you know, like there's shows. And so it's great to make friends with people who are different than you and be able to learn that way. So I would say continue, but also like take it upon yourself to keep researching and learning and not always like put the weight of explaining on those LGBT friends of yours.
Right. Because now you have to automatically be the spokesperson for, you know, poly relationships. And
For sure.
That's got to be, yeah, that's, you know, yeah, that makes sense. This is awesome. Stay tuned, everybody, for Pride Week this week. We've got a couple more amazing mobility professionals tuning in to educate us. This is going to be so much fun this week as we kind of explore how we can be better mobility professionals and more inclusive this week, and really celebrating what Pride's all about. So Adrienne Sweetwater, intercultural consultant, Differänce Intercultural. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Ben. It was wonderful to be on